Welcome to the Ywam Kansas City podcast. We're here to activate our generation into missions and bring inspiration to live like Jesus in everyday life. Welcome to Ywam Kansas City podcast. Today I'm joined by Lance McKinney, one of the leaders from Ywam Spain. So excited to have you here, Lance.
Good to be here.
And today we're talking about can God move in a post-Christian world? And Lance has lived in Spain for about 2 decades or so.
Yeah, 25 years ago I went.
Okay, 25 years ago. And he's seen thousands of young people impacted with the gospel in post-Christian Europe. It's actually possible.
I think it's not just possible. I think it's what makes sense.
Yeah.
They haven't been inundated with religion. So they're a total blank slate. So if you know how to present the gospel, young people are searching for something, and there's this huge hole in their heart. And when they hear about God in an intelligent way that connects with their spirit and their mind, or gets past their mind to their spirit, it just clicks. This is what I've been searching for my whole life. It actually just makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah,
I think it's the non-post-Christian countries that are probably harder.
Okay.
Where they're inundated with religion. Who wants that?
Yeah.
I don't.
I agree. So I'm glad we're on here to talk about it today.
Yeah, cool.
I remember you and I did a road trip back, I think, a few months back or in the fall.
Yep.
And I remember we talked most of the way up, most of the way back down, and you're telling me all kinds of stories about your background, how you ended up in Spain. I would love for our audience to hear a little bit of that.
Sure.
Maybe give us just a little bit. What is your background? How did you even end up in Spain as your destination?
Sure. I grew up in a Christian home. My dad was a leader in a large church, and I knew a lot about God. Mostly because I was in Bible quiz, and so I like competing. I like beating people. And so I had books of the Bible memorized, knew a lot about God. We actually competed against our pastors, and my sister and I beat them. It was amazing.
In Bible memorization.
Yeah, well, in quizzes. So they would ask questions, and
that's impressive.
It was great. But I didn't know God. But when I was 17 years old, I actually graduated high school at 16. I wasn't homeschooled. I just was in a weird situation where we were in a small private school, and I had this option to be either graduating earlier or going a year later. I was a kid. I chose to get out early. Went straight to Bible school. When I was in Bible school, God spoke to me. One morning, I was like, God, what am I doing with my life? I was close to graduation. Everybody else knew what they were doing. I had no clue. I was like, thought I'd be a builder. That was kind of where I was going in life. My dad was a builder. My grandfather was a builder. And the Lord, first time I'd ever seen a vision, showed me a map of the world with countries in red and one word: go.
This is when you were 16.
17, yeah.
Okay.
I was about to turn 18, about to graduate Bible school. And I wasn't smart enough to ask where, when, or do what. But the one word from God's mouth, go, changed my life.
Wow.
I didn't have a passport before then. My parents didn't have passports before then.
Wow.
They're just, why would we leave the States? I can say ever since then, to be in the States is actually a task for me. Because I feel called to the nations. And I don't even remember, I didn't even write down the countries that were in red. I just knew I was to go. So that kind of marked where my destiny, my route in life. I knew I was going to go. I went and helped plant churches in northern Michigan, worked with the church there, planting a new church, and saw great stuff happen. Went to work in a Bible school in South Africa. And that was awesome. It was fun. It was the year Nelson Mandela took over the presidency. It was crazy. South Africa was the funnest year of my life. I was 19. But then I went back after a year because my dad was being ordained and his church was being dedicated. He was now pastor. I didn't grow up as a pastor's kid. I think I'm glad about that. My kids have to deal with being missionary kids. But for me, it was a critical moment in my life because I was frustrated with religion. I'd seen the inside of the machinery, being a part of staff of this Bible school and some complexities that happened there. When I got back, my uncle from Spain, who'd been with the Ywam since 1974, he'd been in Spain for as long as I'd been alive, so over 20 years. He actually said, Lance, I really think you should come to a discipleship training school. I laughed at him. I'm like, that's a joke. A 5-month school. I have my master's I actually finished my master's degree in theology while I was in Spain and in South Africa. So I'm like, what am I going to learn at a silly little 5-month school? It seems that's a joke. Very arrogant, very arrogant, religious Bible school.
I already know
student.
everything I need to know.
Yeah, I know everything.
Quizzes. I'm
That's
good.
right. I'm good. I don't need anything. But I talked to the president of the Bible school that sent me to South Africa, and where I went to school. And he said, Lance, I was praying for you the other day, and I felt like God said you should spend some time with your Uncle Gary. And I said, have you been talking to Gary? Because they know each other. And he said, no, I haven't talked to him in years. I said, well, he just invited me to go to Spain to do a discipleship training school with Ywam. And he said, must be God. So
wow.
I was shocked because it's a very exclusive school. The one I went to was they're kind of internal and not very open to other things. But he said, I believe it must be God, Lance. So I just took that as must be God. My parents agreed. They thought it was good. I was 20 years old, about to turn 21. And I didn't know what YWAM stood for. I'd heard YWAM, didn't even know it meant Youth with a Mission, didn't know what a DTS was, Discipleship Training School, all of our acronyms. I just knew that I was getting a 5-month paid vacation to go to Spain. And so I'm a goal-oriented guy. So I said, well, if I'm going to go to Spain, then I want to do certain things. I want to take these 5 months to really get to know God. I was frustrated with religion, organized religion, the institution of the church, if you will. I was frustrated, very frustrated. And I said, but God, I know you're real, and I love you. I hate this. And so I just didn't really know God. I had a romantic love for God, not an intimate knowledge of who he was in relationship. And so when I went to Spain, I actually went with 4 goals. One was to learn to play guitar. The other was to learn to speak Spanish, to lose 20 pounds, and to get to know God better. And believe it or not, I did all those things, and I gained 100 pounds after that. But it's a true story.
4 for 4 right out the gate, though.
4 for 4, yeah. First 6 months in Spain, I took full advantage of my discipleship training school. I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to get to know God. And I made some amazing friends that are now lifelong friends. But I was there every quiet time. The first time in my life, it was calendared for me. You got an hour in the morning where nobody else is doing anything. There's nothing else going on. And I just pursued God. I read the Bible in a whole new way. It wasn't the memorized version, King James, which is, I didn't even know what it meant. But I would actually read the Bible and say, Jesus, reveal yourself to me. Changed my life. And then the teachings, I was probably the most obnoxious DTS student you could have because I knew way too much. But I was asking real honest questions. And I pushed back. I was tired of just taking things because a leader said it. Just because somebody that's a teacher says something doesn't make it true. And so I was not easily appeased. So I asked some really hard questions and got some really amazing answers from the teachers. And changed my life. Literally, I decided to stay in Ywam because of that experience. I mean, it literally changed my life. And I said, God, this is what I want to dedicate my life to. I want young people to be able to know you like this. Meanwhile, my wife, who didn't speak a word of English, I didn't speak any Spanish, she was willing to teach me guitar. Very patient woman. We've been married 21 years, almost 22.
That's where it all started.
That's where it all started. She knew how to say yes, no, and coffee. That would be about all she knew how to say in English.
And you knew sí,
no, and café. Yeah, but it was kind of interesting. One of my goals was to learn Spanish. I wasn't studying or anything, but I was in a time, we had a ministry time for each student. I was the last one.
You need to share this story because this is one of the stories for those listening right now that every YWAMer on earth has a godly jealousy for this story.
My wife actually had a hatred because she didn't get it. I tell this to non-believers because how I know God is real. And of course, this is my story. They can believe me or not, but I know it's real. I'm not dumb. So I'd been in Spain. It's a bilingual school. We're singing English, Spanish. So I was picking words up. But there was a day where somebody was praying for me. They were praying in Spanish, just a blessing over my life. And literally, I understood every word. I just understood it. I didn't translate it anymore. I understood what they're saying. It's literally crazy. Spanish clicked for me in an instant. The next week, I was translating for the school. And it's
ridiculous.
Yeah. So I get no.
Good ridiculous.
it was a good ridiculous. And if I hadn't spoken Spanish, I wouldn't have stayed in Spain. I know that for sure. But God gave me the Spanish language literally in an instant. The next day I went actually into Madrid, and it was amazing because all of a sudden I thought Spaniards were jerks. I didn't like Spain. I thought where we lived was kind of ugly. No grass, nothing, all kinds of graffiti. It was very ugly. And the people were rude because I'd ask them a question, reading my little guidebook, where is this street?
Before Google Translate,
yeah. And they would literally turn their head as if you didn't exist. Probably didn't hear that, but I just thought they were rude. And then all of a sudden that next day when I went into Madrid, And I asked them, I said, excuse me, can you tell me where this is? And they walked me over to a map and showed me. And I'm like, wow, that person's I met the only nice Spaniard in all of Spain. Then the next person I asked, same thing. And then this lady, we go to the metro stop, and I was with an English friend of mine, didn't speak a word of Spanish. And we go up, and I asked this lady, I said, can you tell me where this travel agency is? She left her flower stand, walked me 2 blocks down the road in Madrid, pointed to, I'm like, Steve, I think we just found the only nice Spaniards in all of Spain. What I realized is, no, the Spaniards are amazing. They were just embarrassed they couldn't understand me, so they wouldn't speak to me. So as soon as I could speak to them, have conversation, I fell in love with Spain.
Wow.
I fell in love with the people of Spain, and God gave me his heart for the Spaniards. You know, especially on outreach, we're doing outreaches, and seeing the lostness of the Spaniards, God captured my heart for Spain. So I decided, my uncle invited me to stay on staff to do a leadership development course, basic leadership school.
So real quick, we can take
Yep.
this in. So when you're in Spain, you're deciding, all right, I'm going to stay here longer. Maybe you didn't
Well, he
know
asked
permanent.
me. He asked me. I did not think permanent, but he asked me, would you consider staying on to be staff in the next school?
Okay.
And we do a basic leadership school for our staff. While they do it, I see leadership potential in you.
What was the condition of Spain at that time? Was it like everyone knew of God? Everyone was really open to the
Culturally
gospel?
Catholic.
Okay.
Approximately at that time, this is 25 years ago right now, this month. I think certain people would say there were approximately 150,000 evangelical believers out of 42 million people at the time.
So not a lot.
Yeah, very, very small percentage. And most people were agnostic, or, I mean, now they'd say they're atheists, but they're really more agnostic. They'd rejected religion as a whole, not interested in God, and definitely not interested in anything that smelled of religion.
Okay.
So yeah, it was very needy. But so Gary asked me if I would stay on, and I prayed about it, and I said, God, this is what I want to dedicate my life to. I want young people to have this experience of knowing you, because it changed my life. I knew all about God. I could quote all the scriptures. I could answer all the questions, but I didn't have a relationship with him until I actually took the time during my DTS to pursue relationship. And there's that atmosphere that a DTS creates. I say it's like being in a greenhouse where all the temperature's right, the soil is moist, there's all the elements to really grow in a very healthy way. So it changed my life, and I wanted to dedicate my life to that. And so I stayed. And that's when my wife and I actually started. That's a whole nother conversation of how she told me. I'll tell it because I think it's worth young people hearing this kind of story. She said to me one day, there are 3 staff on our DTS. We work together all day, every day. And she said to me, Lance, we need to talk. She said, I had a conversation with this other staff member that we would only ever just be friends, and we haven't had this conversation. When she said that, all of a sudden all these bells and whistles and alarms went off in my mind. I'm like, this is the most amazing woman I know. And she's closing the door that I haven't even knocked on yet. And I said to her, can I go for a walk? I said, can we talk later? She's like, sure. So I left and I went for a walk. And if you ever see me walking, as you guys all know, if you see me walking, one of 2 things has happened. My car's broken down, or I'm in a life-changing moment, because I don't go for walks. That's probably why I weigh 300 pounds. True story. But I went out for a walk and I said, God, I don't want to be rejected. I'd never been rejected. I was a really good-looking guy back then. I'd never been rejected, and she's my best friend, and I don't want to ruin our friendship. So anyway, God spoke to me and said, Lance, just be vulnerable. So I went back and I said, Tabitha, you're the kind of woman I want to marry, but I know you're not interested. She said she didn't want to get married. She was very clear, and she said it many, many times. I said, you're the kind of woman I want to marry, but I know you're not interested. So forget I said that, and let's just be friends. And she said, well, you're the kind of man I want to marry.
Oh.
And I said, really? Then we should probably talk to our leaders. And then we actually did. We talked to Gary and Deanna, and we put everything on pause. I said, if it's meant to be, it'll be after this DTS, because the students need staff. So we did. We put everything on pause, and I called my mom. It was kind of funny. I called my mom. I said, Mom, I need to tell you about there's somebody that I'm interested in. And she said, Tabitha? And I said, yeah, how do you know? She said, well, Lance, you always talk about Tabitha. Every phone call we have, you talk about Tabitha. And I think it reveals that what we love, we talk about. Getting back to the evangelism piece. I think when people love God, they're going to talk about him. But it's funny because my mom said, Lance, every time we talk, you say, oh yeah, Tabitha's favorite song is this, or Tabitha's favorite kind of gum. And I knew you liked Tabitha a long time ago. I didn't even know that I was interested, but my mom did. But yeah, so we stayed, we worked with the DTS, and then I led a DTS. Tabitha actually came to the States to get to know my culture and my family. We got married 2 years after we started that relationship. But we were leading a DTS and doing evangelism around Spain. And that's where, for me, my life took another turn. Because, yes, we were providing this amazing experience for young people who are coming to us from all around the world to do a DTS. But one day I was writing a newsletter home after being in Spain, southern Spain, for 6 weeks. We've been doing evangelism, and we'd only seen 2 people come to Christ, an 8-year-old girl and a 60-year-old woman. And I was frustrated because we were sleeping on the floor. There were cockroaches. There were rats. I was kind of whining, saying to God, it's not worth it. And God said, Lance, those 2 people were worth my son's life. Of course, I repented. I said, I'm sorry, God. If it was just for them, it was worth all these 6 weeks, going out 6 days a week, doing evangelism. So, well, what do we do about this lost nation? There's 42 million people that don't know you, and this nation is lost. And all of a sudden, I've been a missionary there for 4 years, and I'd never seen the lostness of Spain, because I was there to invest in young people that came to our schools. And God really broke my heart for the lostness of Spain. But I realized that God said, Lance, they haven't rejected me, they've rejected you. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, and he reminded me of an outreach we'd done where we'd been with some guitars and things, and it just looked like a very poorly organized protest of some sorts. It was terrible. And one of the guitar strings broke, and so I offered to go get a string because I didn't want to be there. Went and got the string, and I'm walking back, and as I'm walking up, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to be there. And God said, if you don't want to be there, how do you expect people that aren't Christians to hear the message? Romans 10 says, how shall they call upon him who they have not heard? How shall they hear unless someone preaches? How shall they preach unless someone sent? He said, well, Lance, they're not hearing the message. Just because you're saying it doesn't mean they're hearing it. You're speaking the wrong language. I said, well, God, how do we reach them? He said, you have to connect with their heart. And I said, well, how do you do that in Spain? And God was really clear. He said, you have to use culture, music, dance, sports, 4 things. I hadn't heard about Impact World at the time. But a few months later, I ran into Mark Anderson, your dad, in Budapest, Hungary. And he was challenging Ywam Europe really hard about going public with the gospel, about being relevant.
Shocking.
He was brutal. It was awesome. I needed that kind of, and I was sitting there, and the director of Ywam Spain was on my left, my wife was on my right, and as he's talking, and he showed this video of Impact World with Team Extreme, GX, and Island Breeze, I was thinking, my wife nudged me and said, Lance, that would work in Spain. I said, I nudged Alfonso Chirene, and I said, Alfonso, somebody has to do that in Spain. He said, He nudged me back, and he said, you and Tabitha. And I said, That's how we heard God on that. We made a decision to change our lives and move to America.
A few ahas later.
Yep. And that really did set the course for the rest of our lives, where we came to the States, learned to do large-scale outreaches, bring together churches, prepare spiritually and organizationally in cities, do the proclamation of the gospel piece with the teams, and people are searching. So that we did that for a couple of years to learn. We went back to Spain, and over the last couple of years, every time we do a public proclamation outreach, 30 to 50% of the people that attend give their lives to Christ. My favorite person, normally when I'm talking about this, I show a picture of an older lady, 73 years old, big event we did, thousands of people, hundreds came forward to give their lives to Christ. And I show this picture because I went up to her later and I said, why did you come forward? 73 years old. She said, I've been waiting my whole life to hear that message. Wow. And I really believe in post-Christian Europe and America, young people don't want religion. They reject it, but they're looking for the message of who God is and who he can be in their lives.
It's amazing. Well, we want to do a part 2 Q&A with you here.
All right.
I feel like we're just getting started. I
feel like
we're just, I know it's great.
I can tell. I mean, it's 20 years of story. Sorry.
Well, I just feel like the momentum is building right now. But we want to do a part 2 Q&A with you here. But I think it's amazing. Real quick, 20 seconds. How would you challenge people right now at home with their unsaved family and friends?
Get to know God intimately. Don't be religious. Share your love for God with them. Don't be a hypocrite. Be real, be authentic. People are looking for authenticity. They're not looking for fake religious answers.
Come on. Amen.
And share, talk, care for them, love them enough to talk. If you don't, we hear that story, preach the gospel at all times when necessary, use words. That's baloney. Yes, live Christianity, live Christ. We actually have a teaching we do that I stole from your dad. Walk as Jesus walked. And I don't have the scripture here in front of me, but live like Jesus lived. But you have to preach. You have to talk. you have to open your mouth. And so love people enough to share the gospel.
Amen. Well, awesome, Lance. Thanks so much for joining. Appreciate it, man. We'll jump on a part 2 here. If you guys are watching right now, I encourage you guys, share, like, subscribe, so you can get the latest with Ywam Kansas City Podcast. Thanks for joining. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow. And be sure to turn on your post notifications to be alerted with the next podcast coming out. Thanks for listening.